I meet somebody, and hopefully I'm like you think that I'm like a regular person. So I meet somebody. If I notice that they're bald, that's just it. Like that's just like the character in my mind, like that's who I'm meeting. And then like on top of that is like all the experiences that come with meeting that person. So I never want people to feel as if like, your hair loss is ever going to define you. Um, you're still the same person that you were. I wouldn't call myself a hyper responder at all, because I feel like when you put people in those categories, usually like a 3-4 month transformation. Mine is taking, honestly, with the KX and Minoxidil, it's about a year and some change now. It's about 14 months. And yeah, my hair is really flourishing, honestly.
Hello, everyone. Before we start this podcast, I just wanted to let everyone know that I started a new company called Folligens. That's Folligenz. And right now we're running liposomal minoxidil sulfate. It's a cosmetic here at 10% concentration and 5% concentration. Again, this is liposomal minoxidil sulfate, not minoxidil base. And we're running it as a cosmetic. Right now, the 10% is 200 out of 300 in stock. And for the 5%, it is currently 276 out of 300 in stock. So if you're watching this and it's still available, go check it out and maybe even try it out. And if it's not in stock, there should be some sort of order queue form where you can put your email address in so you can be notified when it is in stock. So that's pretty much it. Let's get on with the podcast. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of the HairStacks podcast. Today I'm here with a special individual who has a very unique hair loss stack that they've been using to grow back their hair, and I will now turn to them for them to introduce themselves.
So what up, guys? My name is MinoxKing on YouTube. I've been fighting my hair loss for about 3 years now, rough, like give or take, and yeah, I've been using I guess a slightly unconventional stack, with minoxidil and something new called KX826, otherwise known as Reluctance.
Okay, so I guess I'll just start by asking you, when did you start experiencing hair loss, and what were the first steps you took to try to address it?
So I'm 29 now, and I started losing hair at I think around like 23. I'm a diffuse thinner, so it was a very like slow process. I didn't really notice it at first because I used to have like really long, like an afro type. But after college, when I cut my hair, I just noticed that it wasn't growing back as thick. So first I went the I guess the typical route and went on 1 milligram of Finasteride once daily for about a year. And that worked actually pretty well for me, but I had side effects about 6 months in. So I gave it another 6 months just to, see if the side effects would abate, but unfortunately they did not. So I discontinued it in about June of, I think, 2023. And from there, I wanted something just to like hold my hair over, because I was already researching different hair loss, you know, methods. And I stumbled upon Paralutamide KX826, but it wasn't ready for the public yet. There was only like, you could only get it through like, gray market channels. So at first, what I did was I used topical minoxidil 5% for about a year, about 14 months, just to see like where that would put me at, because I know that's not like a treatment that's really going to have like long-term effects, but I always wanted to see how my hair would respond to that. And then when pyrolutamide was released to the public in 2024, literally like the first month it was available, I got on it because I'd already done like the research on, the clinical trials and stuff like that, and seen like, its side effect profile. And yeah, hopped on that, and it's been honestly a steady gain since. I wouldn't call myself a hyper responder at all, because I feel like when you put people in those categories, usually like a 3-4 month transformation. Mine is taking, honestly, with the KX and Minoxidil, it's about a year and some change now. It's about 14 months. And yeah, my hair is really flourishing, honestly.
Thanks for sharing. So I'm not sure if you mentioned this, maybe I didn't catch it, but when you were on finasteride, Were you also using topical minoxidil at the same time?
No, I was just using because I was from what I wanted to like approach my hair loss like scientifically, so I didn't want to add too many things at once, so I wouldn't know what was working at first. So I was just gonna use finasteride, then minoxidil, then add like
Mhm.
add on as needed, essentially.
Okay, I see. Because there might be some people who it may say, right, that maybe the gains you're seeing now could be from minoxidil. So,
Mhm.
in your sort of view, how would you distinguish the KX826 pyrolutamide gains from the topical minoxidil gains?
Okay, so like I said, I used the topical minoxidil by itself, like monotherapy, for about 14 months, and I documented all of that growth on like YouTube and TikTok. So I literally watch my hair like every day. It's kind of like obsessive at this point, but I mean, when you're documenting it, you kind of have to be. So, um, the hair, what I'm seeing now from adding the KX826 is that after my hair stabilized with the minoxidil, I had like a completely like brand new shed that lasted for about 4 to 6 months, where there was like heavy shedding, and then I started noticing that like I call it the in between hairs. Like my hair like responded very well to minoxidil, but there was like hairs in between the hairs that like were responding to minoxidil that weren't like responsive at all. So when I added the KX, it started to like mold and like fold into each other, and now it's like hair like my hairline at the front has dropped at least like because I have like a widow's peak, so my hairline has now dropped down to like match where the widow's peak is, and like those are just weren't gains that I was seeing when I was on minoxidil by itself.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So the more DHT sensitive hairs you're seeing were able to kind of, I guess, grow better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, that's pretty cool. So I guess in your view, are you looking to add anything else to your hair loss stack? Are you maybe even considering going back to finasteride at a lower dose or maybe even topical finasteride? Because typically, at least from how I've seen things, and it may be changing due to new treatments being put on the market, usually if people respond poorly to oral finasteride at 1 milligram a day, they either titrate down by using half a milligram or even a quarter of a milligram, or they end up using a topical sort of formulation, whether it's topical finasteride at 0.1% or even less than that. So what made you just throw away using finasteride altogether? And would you consider going back at a lower dose?
So I had like with finasteride, I have like a sort of like PTSD situation because when I was on it, it's not that I had like I wouldn't call what I was experiencing like finasteride syndrome or post finasteride syndrome, but I was definitely my libido dropped like significantly. That affected like my sex life and like the person I was dating at the time. So as far as finasteride is concerned, I guess that would be like my last line of defense. And even at that, like I think I would just rather just go bald because I mean, um, yeah, finasteride just was like it just didn't vibe with me like as far as the side effects. Like I had panic attacks. I would have like well with the panic attacks, like have like heart flutters. Um, became like I wouldn't say I'm like depressed as a person, but I became definitely more like aware of like depression and like the effects it was having on me. So I guess as far as titrating down or using the point one, I would possibly, but what I'm actually more excited for was a G20029. Um I'm really just looking for more experimental stuff, and honestly, I feel like that's more worth me experimenting with. Because like at this point, like I already wear my hair low, and if it's not like underneath like a turban type situation or a do rag, like I just let the like my hair is like at like a 1 inch at most times, so I'm not really worried about like buzzing my hair, just keeping it low or anything like that. But like I said, I'm more interested in more like clinically tried, more experimental new stuff, just to like show people that like finasteride isn't the only go-to when in these situations, because I've met and talked to a lot of people at this point that had side effects, and now they're looking at they didn't know about KX, and now they're like, oh bro, like I see that you're using it, maybe I could use it, and I'm telling them like, yeah, like why not try it.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty encouraging that we're getting more and more options on the market as time goes by, whether it's a topical, androgen receptor inhibitor like KX826 pyrolutamide, or maybe even some of this new stuff that's been on the media. I'm sure you've heard of it, like PP405. That seems to be a potential future option. There are people who apparently are trying it now in more experimental settings. But yeah, I wholeheartedly hear you, right? There are some people who will have some side effects to finasteride, which can be a bit off-putting, even dutasteride itself. So the sort of topical variations of those drugs themselves too, and even alternatives like KX826 could be well placed for them. Now, I guess from that point on, what would you, I guess, advise people? Because there are some people who claim, right, when we get into the whole side effects world of things, there are people who even claim that KX826 give them side effects, right?
Yeah.
How, I guess, and the mind is a powerful thing, right? Like you can experience stuff that you might be apt to blame on a specific part of your stack. But I guess in this particular case, what would you tell someone in terms of trying to figure out what is causing their side effects, right? How would you tell them to narrow down what in their hair loss stack is contributing to potential side effects, or if they may be just having general anxiety towards the treatment?
Yeah. So whenever people ask me, like, because people ask me as if I'm like an expert sometimes, and I'm just like, guys, like I'm really just a guy like you, just figuring stuff out. But what I would say is that like you have to, like I said, be more scientific with your approach, because I see a lot of people like, they start on a stack and it's immediately, minoxidil, finasteride, this, that, RU at the same time. And then they're having like these side effects and wondering like where it's coming from. I can't tell you, you have to do these things one at a time and like actually figure it out. And before you even get into honestly, like, the pharmaceutical route, I think before that you should, clear out anything before. So, some people say like, oils in their hairs and stuff. I don't believe that that's usually going to stop it, but you might be someone that, maybe all you need is your hair to be moisturized, and like that'll bring your hair back. Or, maybe it's just have to get healthy, or, might be a vitamin deficiency. So I feel like there's a few things that you should be doing before you even hop into a hair loss stack, before, like, and go to your doctor for sure first. Like a lot of people are going to Reddit and stuff. Like, guys, we have to like, take your health seriously. So as far as figuring out where your side effects are coming from, just have to like scale back, whatever treatment you're on, and then see if that like, if the side effects abate, essentially.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And that's something that I've seen myself, where people will have 20 things, literally, sometimes even 20 things going on in their hair loss stack, using several experimental compounds that we just don't even know anything about. And then they're like, okay, what's causing my side effects? It's like, I mean, you're using so many things. It's kind of like on you to figure out what you can drop and what you can add. And even then, there could be several things that are working synergistically to help your hair kind of maintain itself. And it could be that one thing or two things or three things that you drop might end up with you having a shed too. So that's something that people have to be a bit, aware of, I will say. But, even on that front, would you say, because you said earlier there, you had side effects to Fin and you wouldn't even consider it, right? If, due to the, I guess, libido issues that you had and all the other issues too. Do you ever think there are some side effects worth dealing with in the face of complete hair loss?
I mean, so like I said, I used Fin for a year. I started experiencing like sexual side effects and stuff like that around 6 months in. And honestly, like as a person, it's not like I'm like completely like, like engorged by like sex and stuff like that. But again, after a year of it, I was like, all right, like, I've seen people say like, if you wait on it, the effects should abate, or it should like subside a little bit. And I've seen people be on dutasteride, which is an even stronger inhibitor, and say nothing's wrong. So I was just like, I really just took the time to like let it play out. So it's not like something like that I was afraid of. Like I was never afraid of the set of side effects, which is why I don't think I had like post-finasteride syndrome and stuff like that, because afterwards it took me about like a year of like the mental like games with myself, because like I always say, like once you realize something's like broken or like not working properly, it's kind of like, you start becoming fearful of that in and of itself. So the anxiety that comes from like performing in like a sexual environment. So when I say I'd just rather go bald, it's just that like, you know, I feel like for a lot of men, we're doing this to feel better about ourselves. Like you're trying to get your hair back to like gain confidence, right? So while I had a full, like, you know, with the finasteride, I was working perfectly. So while my hair was like flourishing, I still felt more anxiety and like not shame, but like, you know, like the idea of like not performing than me just being bald, which is why I was just like, you know, if it came down to it, I would just rather just cut Finn completely. Um, but I do think that like, you know, a lot of things are tolerable. Like, you know, I see a lot of some guys say like, what is it? Uh, you know, like there's a mental fog like associated with and stuff like that. And yeah, like a lot of it I was able to power through, but I don't know. I feel like, do I want to live like that forever? Probably not.
I hear you, yeah. And you know, there's I guess you can say there are social side effects or consequences of you not even having your hair too that I think people should be, you know, have some consideration for, right? So there's always going to be a downside and a upside on whatever path you pick. I guess it's the magnitude and, you know, how much can you deal with that downside or upside? Primarily just the downside of things. I guess another question, going back to, you mentioned some people might need oils, and, you know, we're not saying that oils grow hair here, but some people might need oils for their hair type, because maybe they might have an issue with retaining moisture, right? And that could lead to things like breakage or drier hair becoming a bit more, you know, dealing with shrinkage and such. The formulation of KX826 that I think you're probably using contains alcohol, correct? So
Yeah.
how do you deal with using, and so many people complain about formulations that contain alcohol. How do you deal with that? Because it's taking away the moisture from your hair, which, you know, if it's growing the hair back, there's also a rate at which it can lead to breakage due to the lack of moisture being retained into the hair shaft. How does one deal and maintain with this?
So at least with my hair texture, like I have like a more like curly 4C-ish type hair. So what I usually do is when I use the KX in the morning, if I don't like wash my hair, like wash it out of my hair. I'm not saying like, you know, with a shampoo and like conditioner. I'm saying it's like just rinse your hair like in a few hours. Um Eventually like the both the oils, the KX and the minoxidil will eventually like create like a layer of like, I don't even know, like I don't know, like a layer of like, I don't want to say grime, but it's like you literally have like something on your hair. Um, so what I've been doing for the last like month, 2 months now is like whenever I use the KX, like, and after it completely dries, about an hour or two after that, I just wash it completely out of my hair. Um, and this is after like, let's say I have like a wash day on like a Monday. Oil my hair down, use the KX the next morning, wash it out the next day, and then like it'll just keep my hair honestly looking really like refreshed and like there's no buildup, nothing on my head, nothing like that. And yeah, it's been working really well like that, just washing it out. Um Essentially after it dries, like I don't think you have to keep it into your hair for the whole day at all.
Yeah, and that's something that people kind of get a bit anxious about, even with just regular topical minoxidil. How long are you to keep this on your scalp? Do you have to keep it on for the whole day, or do you wash your scalp as soon as the topical dries? You know, that's something that people kind of grapple with. And the sort of grime that I guess you're describing, or a buildup rather, is primarily due to the propylene glycol, right? So some people, when they're using topical minoxidil, they talk about how they get dandruff. And dandruff is certainly a thing that can happen, sometimes due to the agitation that occurs with, you know, you literally applying alcohol to your scalp. But also, there's the white flakes that typically occur, and the sort of like how would you describe it? Like gel-like structure, I guess, that you can kind of roll around in your finger. I used to use topical minoxidil. That's propylene glycol, right? And that in and of itself can cause agitation. So And it's annoying too because it can cause part of your hair to clump together, and then that causes breakage. And then usually people don't see the benefits of the growth that they get from these treatments due to, what we just described now: shrinkage, breakage, and a lack of moisture, and so on and so forth. So I think the method you kind of described works out for people like, who have the 4C, more curlier hair textures. And it's really up to people to kind of like figure that out themselves.
Yeah.
So moving on from that, right? Are there any other treatments you've mentioned GT229, right? That is still in clinical trials, I think, in China, but they're a bit behind here in the United States. Are there any other sort of experimental treatments that you may try in the future or that you tried before? You did mention RU58841, so it looks like you are aware of that.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm really deep in like the Reddit threads and on Trestless and stuff like that. So like you mentioned before, the PP405 and GT20029 are really the ones that I'm like looking forward to the most. Like I was really excited for KX, so now I'm just now I feel like I can just kind of like chill and like kind of wait for these other treatments to come down the pipeline, and then make a decision based on those. But I really want something now that I don't have to use like every day. So I'm excited for the PP405 because I think they said people are only using like 3 times a week or something like that. I'm looking for something that I can like space out and not have to worry about like on a daily basis.
Yeah, I hear you on that, certainly. I think with GT229, if I'm not mistaken, it goes from like a couple week application to a once a week at some point where you just apply it on your scalp once and then you're good for the whole week. So that, having a treatment like that on the market, and from the pictures that, that I actually interviewed Kintor. So the pictures that I got from them and then, some of the public material and studies that they put out, it certainly looks very promising, and people are definitely waiting for additional updates. That's kind of like what's holding up the hair loss community at the moment. But I guess moving away from conversations about treatment, I guess I just want to talk about more the social aspects of hair loss and just how you're navigating it, and maybe potentially people in your life, how they may be navigating it too. And it tends to be the case that, from what I've seen and from the people that I've talked to, whenever people start dealing with their hair loss, the people immediately around them ask, the question, "Hey, what did you do?" Right? Have you have you received that sort of question from your friends or family members?
Oh yeah, so like now that I'm like really public with my hair loss, I definitely have people that like I guess were like I didn't even know were losing hair asking me about like like bro, like now my hairline's going back and stuff like that. And these are a lot of people that like are very like forward facing, like Instagram-esque, like picturesque type people that are now like coming to me asking like what I'm doing. So yeah, it definitely changed, I guess, like that dynamic, because I feel like a lot of people now, especially around me, don't feel as ashamed to talk about it, because I feel like like I said, I'm 29 now, so like my group of friends are like 25 to like 35 type situation. So a lot of these people are losing hair that they never lost before. Like they're coming from college, they're used to be teens, and now like they're seeing people that still have full heads of hair, and then now they're losing it, so they're like kind of like questioning why that's happening. And yeah, it's definitely been like kind of like eye-opening, because for a lot of time I felt like I was kind of like the odd one out. Like I have all these friends with like super long hair, and like they're luscious and stuff like that, and I'm just there like, damn, like I had to buzz my hair again yesterday. But it's like, yeah, like having other people going through the same thing and like being comfortable enough to come and talk to me about it, and then eventually like being able to joke about it, because like I don't know, losing hair I feel like isn't a death sentence, especially if, like you were talking about the social impact. If someone meets you bald, that's how they meet you. I tell people all the time, like, don't cover your hair. Like, it'll be such a great feeling if someone met you bald and then you ended up having hair in the future. But if you pretend to have hair, or you're always covering it with a hat, then you kind of build this situation around yourself where now, like, people expect you to have hair, or like when they don't see it, now they're gonna be like, oh, I didn't know you were bald. Like, I feel like all of us as like, balding men, find a hairstyle that's comfortable. If you gotta buzz it or whatever, like just do that and then figure it out as you go. Like let people meet you bald, and then go from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I certainly hear you. There's sort of an anxiety around it, I guess you can say. And it certainly says something where people are now coming to you to talk to you privately about these concerns. Like, hey, I'm losing my hair. I need help. What did you do? What can I do? So on and so forth. But I think with this kind of content, more people are recognizing that, hey, you can be confident in just coming out and talking about literally what maybe everyone sees on what's going on your head, right? Like you're losing your hair. You can hide it all you want, but there will be some sort of understanding that there is a degree of hair loss, and it's a normal thing that happens in life, certainly, that people will lose hair. But I don't think people should feel ashamed for having an issue with their hair loss and actually talking about it and trying to find ways to either treat it or, I guess, move on and accept it.
Exactly, for sure. Like, I don't think, feel me, I don't think there definitely shouldn't be, you know, like I've seen so many degrees of hair loss at this point that like, you know, I've seen like slick bald to like diffuse thinners to like people that are like completely like freaking out about like a little widow's peak or like a little crown issue. And it's just like, yeah, guys, if we all were just to acknowledge that like, yeah, this is kind of just happening. And like I said, don't try to hide it. I feel like hiding it is really where it comes down to like really like not ruining your life, but making you see your life as like less than because of not having hair. And so in so many situations and in so many people I talk to, like, you know, I meet somebody, you know, and hopefully I'm like you think that I'm like a regular person. So I meet somebody. If I notice that they're bald, that's just it. Like that's just like the character in my mind, you know, like that's who I'm meeting. And then like on top of that is like all the experiences that come with meeting that person. So I never want people to feel as if like, you know, your hair loss is ever going to define you. Um, you're still the same person that you were, you just don't have hair. And like I know that's kind of jarring because like I said, I used to have long, I'm talking like I had locks when I was like a kid, and then I grew up, I had an afro, and then I had really long braids and twists and stuff like that. So like it was definitely an adjustment period, like feeling like, you know, dang, I can't grow my hair anymore. um but with that being said, I feel like I've come out almost like stronger on the other side, because it's like now I'm meeting people bald, like with you know what I'm saying, and I definitely still have like, you know, a bald spot, like my crown definitely hasn't like recovered like the rest of my hair. So definitely you could, if I in a certain light or whatever, and I put my head down, you're seeing a bald spot. But like I don't know, like with meeting the friends that I've met recently, it's like I said, bald, like I'm meeting new people bald, or at least with a buzz cut. And it feels so good to just be able to like take off everything and just like be outside in the sun and not be worrying about like, you know, oh, is the wind gonna hit, like, you know, is the wind gonna hit crazy, or is my hair gonna get wet? But yeah, no, it's just definitely been a great feeling, like just doing this in public. You know, I watched I think that some guys called like the Hair Cafe, and sometimes he does like interviews on like bald guys, and like I saw a few of his stuff, and I was just like, yo, bro, yeah, like I'm
Oh,
not
I
worried
think you
about
meant Bald Cafe.
Bald Cafe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bald
Bald Cafe.
Cafe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like so, like I've watched a few of his stuff, and it like literally just opened my eyes to be like, man, like, you know, like yeah, you know, no one could say something doesn't matter to you, but I'm telling you, to other people, like, and especially the people that matter, it won't matter to them.
Yeah, that's true. I guess most people they're in their own heads throughout the day, and we see bald people all the time. Like even since we've been young kids, we've seen older bald people. So I guess in the typical sense, when you're walking down the street, you see a bald person, unless you're like in this weird hair loss community, you might start thinking about all the treatments, but regular typical folk, they don't really process that, so to speak. But I guess in some settings, when it comes to dating, that processing might be a bit up there. Might be a consideration if someone is bald. But I guess to the point that we were talking about, when it comes to people feeling more confident to talk about their hair loss or what they're doing, there also is a segment of the population who might be on treatment and they won't even tell you. Like they might be on treatment. They're like, yeah, I'm on rosemary oil, and then you come to find out they've been on dutasteride the whole time. It's kind of like a weird segment of this community that I'm just finding more and more information about as the days go on.
I've seen that a lot too, which is why I was like, you know, I see some people like pushing oils and stuff on like these social medias and stuff like that. But like I feel like definitely something that's left out in a lot of conversations is who's actually on what, like you said. Like I've caught, I mean, I'm not gonna say caught like I was like, you know, researching or anything like that, but I've definitely seen a few people post about like, oh, yeah, like you said, rosemary oil or like, or black castor oil saved my hair. And then like, you scroll back a few years and you see like, yeah, oh, starting finasteride treatment. It's like, all right, I feel like that should have been at the forefront of the conversation if we're going to talk about oils, because that might not even be what's actually saving you. And then a lot of people are very like, and rightfully so, like they're questioning me about like, what are my motivations for telling people about what I'm on. So like a lot of people are like, oh, are you getting like paid? I'm not getting paid for this, guys. Like I'm not, you know what I'm saying? Like people are like, oh, like I buy all these products myself, So it's like I'm using it and I'm trying to show people like, you can like guess some of these products are like a little expensive, right? But I'm showing people how to space it out, how to make it last longer, how to document everything that you do, because if it's not working, you don't want to be using it, right? And then B, again, you have to give it time to work. A lot of people are using these products for like 2 weeks and they're like, hey, and I'm going through a shed, I'm about to stop, and it's like, bro, you haven't even given it like 3 months to even see if like you're a responder. So yeah, I feel like there's definitely a lot of like smoke and mirrors in this community, especially when people are like trying to build a following to like, I don't know, like push. Like I've had a lot of people, now that like I'm a year or two into like treatments, 3 years into treatments, I'm having like these companies hit me up for like sponsorships, and it's like I'll never talk about or post a product that I don't use. So like I'm turning a lot of people down on that front. But like, yeah, I see a lot of people hitting me up for hair fibers and stuff like that. And I'm just like, guys, like, I feel like it's definitely dishonest for you to try to use me as a spokesperson to try to throw your product onto the results of someone else's work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that certainly makes sense, right? Like, at least, if you're getting sponsored, you should want to have tried the product at least a couple times. So I can certainly understand you on that front. But even so, I've talked to other sort of, how would you describe them, hair loss influencers, and they've mentioned things like, hair transplant clinics from Turkey hitting them up and asking them, hey, we'll do a transplant for you free of charge, or maybe at a significantly reduced cost, if you just make a video on us, right? And my thing is, I'm not going to come at how people make their money. By all means, make your money. But there needs to be some sort of, how do you say this? Some sort of like marker that you have when it comes to who you accept and who you reject, right? Because there are some people who just accept everything, and to the point where it's contradictory to what they even say themselves. Like you'll have a guy that says finasteride works, dutasteride works, nothing else works, and then on TikTok, the next video they make is about how they got these vitamins from a supplement company and it's growing their hair. It's like, wow, dude, really?
Yeah.
So what happened? Like, how much money did it take to convince you? And if it was a lot of money, then hey, I understand. But you gotta at least be semi-consistent with the message you're putting out. So that's I wholeheartedly understand what you're saying. But a bit more about, let's say, I don't want to say treatment, but just some questions of maybe alternative things that you may have considered. So, have you ever considered doing scalp micropigmentation?
SMP. I thought about it, but like again, my hair type is in such a way that like I can, if I was going for that specific look, I would just keep my hair like shaved down super low, like buzzed. Like no guard. Like I think that would essentially have the same effect as a SMP.
Yeah, I can hear you on that. I guess some people use SMP as an enhancer if they have no hair, not even like a small bud. If they have no hair on a region of their scalp, so they try to mask that and homogenize it by getting tiny dots. But sometimes those SMPs look horrific. They just look like, not to sound rude or mean to anyone that might have considered it, but if you get a cheaply done SMP, it's so obvious. It's like a little tattoo on your scalp, like a blob of ink with no sort of definition to it. So at least for some hair types, I can see how, using SMP might just be a disaster, and it might not even make any sense. Moving on from that, though, have you considered a hair transplant?
So I actually went to a hair transplant clinic in my area to about maybe like 8 months to a year ago now. A little bit before I started KX, I believe, or maybe like a month or two after. And when I went to them, they actually said I wasn't a good candidate because I wasn't at the time, like after using minoxidil for a year and 14 months. They essentially said like, yeah, you're not a good candidate because a hair transplant would mess up the local hairs close to the ones that I guess were affected by DHT. So they
Oh,
were
so
saying,
wait, just to cut in real quick, because you were diffuse, that's why?
yeah, they were saying I wasn't a good it's essentially said that they wanted me to be more bald before like
Yeah,
they
isn't that
would
crazy? I think not to cut in, but I've heard some other people say that where doctors will essentially tell them, yeah, you just have to let the problem get worse before we even do a transplant. And I'm just like, that doesn't sound right to me. Like, maybe the answer should be you guys just don't have the skill to transplant in between hairs, rather than saying, let the problem get worse. Usually they don't want to say they don't have the skill to do that. That's why they're telling you, oh, it's your defect. And it is a hard thing to do, to transplant for people that have diffuse thinning, but it's certainly not impossible, or I guess like, diffusing a nuclear bomb, so to speak, right? So I don't know why they told you that essentially just to, like, maybe because it's too hard and too much time and they just don't want to deal with it. That's why I think they personally told you that.
Yeah, no, and then they definitely upsold me on the PRP right after for like 4,000. I was like, damn, okay.
As they all do. Like, PRP is so economical, it's so efficient for the clinic because you come in with your own blood and you have to pay them pretty much what you're paying them. Like, I'll say this, one patient can cover the supplies used for all patients due to how much money you're paying them, right?
Mhm.
So just imagine that at scale, where you have 200 patients that come in, you take their own blood out, and then with material that was essentially paid for by one patient, you're spinning up the blood in a centrifuge and injecting it right back to them, all for a fee of $4,000 a month, or something crazy like that. So you can already see where their motivations were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, didn't go back after that. So
I guess moving on to another question. So we're going back to treatment. Have you considered oral minoxidil? If so, why or why not?
So I've like after the finasteride route, because I was taking that orally, I did consider the oral route because it seemed like it would just be easier for me. But the reason why I actually stuck to the topical route is because like I'm online all the time, so I was seeing people say that, oh, you should try topical before oral just to see like if you react to it, because some people aren't responders to topical. And then with me, I just wanted to use just enough to like cover my affected areas. Like taking the pill, it felt like it would be like a full body experience rather than like me like targeting exactly where was being affected. So after I saw that the topical was working, I kind of just like shelved that idea for now.
Yeah, I certainly hear you on that. People don't necessarily want to have full body hair growth, especially if you're already a hairy person. And maybe some women don't even want to deal with that. Maybe the majority, but definitely the majority of women wouldn't want to deal with full body hair growth. So I can understand why, in your case, you would prefer to just keep it localized by using a topical treatment like topical minoxidil rather than the oral minoxidil counterpart. But, there are some people who say they get more utility out of oral minoxidil, but then there's also higher risk with cardiovascular side effects, which I'm sure you are aware of. So, that's certainly a lot to consider if you're grappling with topical use. Because, and going back to the formulation aspect of things, right? The act of applying alcohol to your scalp once or twice a day certainly can dry it out, certainly can cause agitation. So I can see why people would want to avoid that while still preferring to use oral minoxidil as a sort of replacement to topical. But with that being said, you talked about how you cut your hair down to a certain length. Have you considered or have you tried just letting your hair grow out to see where the length is and I guess the density difference is where it's at now?
Yeah, so I cut my hair in like I guess like a 4 to 5 week cycle. So just to keep it like standard for like the pictures and stuff like that, because I don't want people thinking like, oh, you let your hair grow out, so like now your hair just looks thicker. So I honestly shave my hair down really for like the experiment, the plot. Um, if every time I shave it down, even with it lower, let's say even like 6 months ago, like the same length compared to now, you can see night and day that now it looks thicker, which is like a great, like, I don't even know how to explain like the feeling of it. So when I first started, like I have like this like toilet bowl like diffuse pattern where it comes from the crown, it wraps around. It's like very typical, I would think, for diffuse thinners. It's like it wraps around, comes to the front, and like I have like a little patch in the middle where the hair is thicker. And now when I cut my hair down, you can still see like you see the pattern, but you're also now seeing like the hairs start to like mold into each other. So like the line between the DHT affected hairs and not is like becoming blurred, and it's becoming blurry every time, or becoming more blurred as time goes on. So I think the longest I let it go to is about like 5 weeks, and at that point my hair is maybe like 2 to 3 inches long. But it's also like laid down because like I wear like a do-rag or a turban or a head wrap. So it's kind of hard to say what my hair would look like, again, because of like, my hair texture, hair type. But yeah, with keeping it low, it exposes everything. So I feel like that kind of keeps the critics from like, thinking that I'm trying to like manipulate the results.
Actually, I will say that with your case, right? I want to give you props because for shaving the hair down for progress pictures, usually people just let it grow out, and then you'll have the whole argument that, oh, well, you just grew out your hair and now you're masking it effectively, or yeah, maybe it gave a slight bit improvement, but clearly you're just using your hair length to achieve a sort of coverage. But not many people are willing to, every couple of months shave the scalp again to get consistent photos. So definitely with your case, you get a better idea of progress because you have a more consistent hair length as well as lighting condition, and people can't say, oh, well, he's using coverage to mask it. No, like for the most part, you're keeping things relatively consistent in how you track, your hair loss. So that's really, really good. And I think a lot of people, I guess people aren't willing to shave their head as soon as they start growing it again, but certainly in a progress tracking sort of sense, you were doing it right.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that.
Most certainly. So let's see. I think I burnt through a lot of my questions here, but we always try to get to at least 1 hour. So any sort of advice, I guess you can say, you would give to someone who is a bit concerned when it comes to using any sort of pharmaceutical drug, right? Maybe they want to keep their hair. How do you at least approach somebody who comes to you? Rather, I mean, I guess it's the other way around. If they're coming to you, you're not approaching them. So how do you talk to someone who says, hey, I don't want to use any sort of pharmaceuticals, but I want to keep my hair? What is the reality that you try to express to them?
So it really, I feel like at that point, if you're coming to me with that, I would assume that your hair loss has progressed to a point where like you're starting to notice it and you start to feel like uncomfortable about it. The first thing I would say is, go to a doctor first, see what is actually, because everyone's hair loss can be different. It could be, like I said, it could be like a vitamin deficiency for some people. It could be like, your hair isn't oiled and stuff like that. So go figure out exactly what your hair loss like is attributed to, and then start like tackling it scientifically. So I would say first, first get your health under control. I'm talking like if I'm not saying you have to be in the gym working out, but get a more healthy lifestyle, get your steps in, stuff like that, get your diet, vitamins, everything situated. If you're still going bald, all right, now we could talk about like you actually going bald. And then I would say topical route first, take it one at a time, and if this is something that you're serious about, you're gonna have to put a year in between different products or treatments. So monotherapy first, just to like try it out, see what you like. If you want to start with Fin, sure, start at a low dose of Fin for a year, see what's up with it. If you want to start with now that we have alternatives, you could try KX, pyrolutamide, and then see how that affects you. Personally, if pyrolutamide was out before I had started Minoxidil, I would have started with KX first and then added Minoxidil. So I kind of did it backwards because in my thinking, I wanted to see how far my hair can get while not inhibited by DHT. But since I'm already on Minoxidil, I just added it on top. But if I was to start over, KX first. If that doesn't work, Finasteride, I guess. And then after that, add the Minoxidil to see if like that boosts it further.
That's certainly a sensible methodology, and I would certainly try to go about giving people a similar bit of advice, but also telling them that you need to have some sort of pharmacological intervention if you really want to keep your hair, and at the very least, you have to be using something like Minoxidil, whether it's topical or oral, because if you're not, then it's kind of tough to remedy your hair loss, especially if it's androgenetic alopecia. We're not even talking about like other more, I guess, serious forms of hair loss where the therapies on that particular dynamic isn't really solidified, like in planopilaris, for example, also known as LPP, maybe frontal fibrosing alopecia or fibrosing alopecia in a distributed pattern. A lot of these sort of, horrific hair loss conditions. But you did mention that you, at one point when you were younger, you had braids, right? Do you think in any way that having braids could have contributed to weaker hair follicles over time?
So I thought that too. And at some point, I started getting my braids like not as small, like more like thicker, like cornrows or like a 2-strand twist. And I feel like even growing up, if I would cut my hair sometimes, like certain parts would look thinner than like other parts, but like I would have people growing up tell me, "Oh, you might go bald in the future," because I guess they were seeing something, I guess on my crown, or maybe something was thinning even back then that I wasn't just like privy to. So while I do think traction alopecia is a thing, definitely in the Black community as far as like our braids and stuff like that, I don't think that specifically was my problem, because really what happened was, after I cut my hair, and then like a few months later is when I started like like I cut my hair to like like a buzz cut after like having like braids for like 2-3 years. And then that's when I actually started to notice like like certain spots were thin, and I didn't like recover with just having my hair low for like a year or stuff like that. So while traction alopecia definitely is a factor in a lot of situations, I don't think it was the defining factor in mine.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that as well. There always is some sort of aspect, but for the majority of cases, it's really just androgenetic alopecia. Unless you have a really really tight hairstyle like Playboy Cardi. I made a video on him. His, I don't know what the hell he was doing, but he was just butchering his scalp with the amount of retwists he was getting, and just all these tight hairstyles where you can see the scalp like swollen in some photos. I don't know what the hell he was doing. Again, that was a bit too far. But going back to the formulation of KX826, is there anything about that particular formulation that you wished Kintor would do better? Like maybe less alcohol, less of that grimy propylene glycol. Is there anything that you think they could do better to make your experience improved?
So as far as the formulation, I feel like for me, it's not too bad. As far as like, like my hair never feels like itchy. For example, I don't let it build up enough to like have dandruff. Like I said, I wash it out like within like 2-3 hours after like putting it on. Um, so as far as like the formulation, I don't really have a problem with it. But what I will say is that there are a few people that I've spoken to that don't take well to the propylene glycol, and they were asking Kintor to, I guess, make it more oil based, but Kintor was saying that it would be more irritable to certain groups of people. So but again, I guess that would, like, there was this one guy that I was really like talking to. We were like debating about it. He said he wanted to make it oil based so that the absorption would be better, something like that. But I personally have no problem with their formulation as far as the alcohol and stuff like that. Like, because like I said, I wash it out before it even becomes irritable.
Yeah, I can understand why Kintor took that sort of perspective, because a lot of people with oil-based sort of topicals, they don't like it because over time it can become greasy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of have to like appease two groups at once, like, and you can never really do that. There's always going to be somebody that has a problem with the formulation, even at least one, and then there's somebody who has none, no issue whatsoever. But I still think, just as somebody who has, interacted with the various Kintor products before, just my opinion, I do think they probably could scale back with the amount of alcohol they use. Probably definitely remove the propylene glycol. They used to have this this formulation that, I'm not sure if they still have it. I'm looking at it right now. It's like this green version, like a botanical alternative, which it did use, natural oils. I'm pretty sure, I think it used some medium chain triglycerides of some kind. And I think it would be more appropriate if they kind of reduced the alcohol, because over time, just from what I've seen from various studies, for various hair types, nearly all hair types, more so on the curlier ends, maybe between 3C up to 4C, right? The more you get that alcohol exposure, the higher the tendency is that you're losing moisture from your hair strands, and that leads to you having to use, oils, or you putting water on your scalp and on your hair rather, and then you putting oil on top of it to retain the moisture. There's more of that activity that has to go on, and it can be very, labor intensive, so to speak. So I think there could be a sort of happy medium between not being too alcoholic, but also it being a little bit more oil based.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that too, though, because yeah, no, before I started washing my hair out, I was definitely like, yeah, the buildup and the propylene glycol, like you said, was definitely not an issue per se, but it was definitely noticeable to the point where, like, yeah, I was thinking like, oh, is my hair dry all the time? But no, that it definitely was the product I was putting in.
Yeah. But with that being said, we're nearly at the end of the podcast. Usually I like to wrap this up by asking the person if they have any advice they could give to people, which I think I already asked you that question, but any sort of positive outlooks you have for the future for other hair loss therapies? I know we talked about PP405, but are there any other on your radar? Maybe GT229. If possible, would you be a clinical trial participant?
I would definitely like. Like I said, I feel like like all of this stuff is experimental, and I tell people that all the time. Like we're literally living in a time and an age where like we're experiencing the experiments that people in the future are going to like look back on and base their decisions off of. Which is why I'm always like, yo, guys, we have to like, if you're using KX, if you're using all this stuff, like it's brand new. We have to be the ones to document what's going on for the future. Like, if we get like a lot of use cases where outside of like a clinical setting, people are seeing that this stuff is working, then like there's no debate about whether or not it does. Because I know, you know, there might be, because I remember before KX, the people were saying that, you know, the phase 2 trials weren't even showing any like statistical significance and stuff like that. And then now, you know, those same people are coming back to me and being like, hey bro, like dang, this stuff actually works. So it's like we're the ones experimenting with this stuff. So yes, I would personally be a part of a trial. I mean, I don't think they would want someone that's that's using so many things at one time. It might skew their results, but let's say they were to send it to me early, I would try it. And yeah, and I would let y'all know. And and as far as like a positive outlook on this stuff, again, guys, we're living through such a technological age where, you know, finasteride isn't the only, you know, end all be all anymore. Like you can experiment, you can, you know, try to mix and match this stuff for your specific needs nowadays. Like we don't have to, like, you know, have a one foot shoe fits all situation anymore. And I think that's something definitely to be hopeful for in the future, especially when you start seeing like these other things coming down and like seeing that now there's going to be like competition among these treatments, you know. So competition breeds, you know, ingenuity, and I think that this is really just the beginning of, you know, a renaissance, I would say, of like hair loss treatments.
I like the way you put it, right? Like we're currently using treatments, a whole set of treatments, experimental at that definitely in the future, at least one of them, people will be consistently using, right? And that's why I kind of like this space, because you have some people who are a bit crazier and out there, a bit more adventurous, where they're willing to just order some random powders from, you know, some random country, and then mix it and put it on their scalp. And it could be maybe out of some of those powders, one of them, I know people are trying to get the PP405 metabolites like JXL069 or JXL089. Maybe some of them might actually be a feasible treatment, but it's very interesting that we're in the age of experimentation, and like you say, right? Maybe it could be the case that KX826 at the moment it doesn't have long-term data like finasteride and dutasteride does. It could be the case. Hopefully, it is the case that it may. Let's say it may not be 1-to-1 with fin and dut, but it does have long-term efficacy. If that's the case, that's phenomenal, right? Now people have more of an option to combat this issue that's been stressing them out, this issue that is hair loss. So, you know, most definitely, I agree with you on that. And yeah, I mean, if you could get GT229 right now, if, you know, Kintor, if you're listening, right? You know, send me some GT229 in a bottle. Certainly I'd make a video on that. I'm serious, you know. I'll sign the waivers. I'll say, hey, it's my responsibility. I just wanna. How do I say this? I want to interact with it for scientific purposes. So that's my take. Yeah, strictly. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, before we close off, another quick question: what concentration of KX826 are you using?
I use the lowest version. I think it's the 0.5, the blue bottle.
Yeah, I think it's 0.5 is the blue bottle. They have some new ones out right now, like the purple one is 0.9 or 1%, I believe. And then there's the gray bottle. It has some new stuff in it. Like I think it's 1.5% Copexyl, which is a Minoxidil alternative. And then it has something called Coprol, 1% Coprol, which is a potassium channel opener similar to Minoxidil again. So I guess they're throwing the whole kitchen sink at it, so to speak. Yeah. So maybe that one works, but it's a bit expensive. So, you know, there's that. But also, it's time for you to plug your social medias. Like, where can people find you? I'll certainly put it in the description below.
You can find me on any platform, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram at MinoxKing. I have the same picture, same Abby. So it's hard to miss. And yeah, I'm gonna be I post updates. I try once a day, but at least once a week. Now that I've passed the year mark with KX, I'm trying to drop less frequent videos and just more like high quality. So I'm going to be doing this for the foreseeable future, guys. So if you ever want any updates on KX or to see where I'm at, MinoxKing, and I'll be there.
All right. Well, thank you, MinoxKing, and that's pretty much it for this podcast. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.